Hello YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian we are going over episode 6 of the Mayfair Witches, and I've gotta say, a lot actually happened in this episode. Like a lot. And it was probably like the first episode of the series so far that I was like, okay, this is kind of good. Like, you know, it's 3/4 of the way through the season, but they made it. Finally, like there's plot happening. Like something is happening to drive the story forward. Finally. And going into the last 2 episodes, hopefully this like streak continues. But anyways, let's talk about episode 6. So like normal at this point, we start off back in Donley, Scotland. We're with Suzanne, and of course Mr. Fancy Wig Witch Hunter shows up. He's there to capture Suzanne. She's being formally accused of witchcraft. And we all knew this was coming. Midwives are always the first to go on a witch hunt. And speaking of witch hunters, let's go back to the present, because we check back in with creepy coroner. He's watching a video by this guy. His name is Arlo White, and he is obviously like kind of like a men's rights bozo type of dude, you know, king of the incels in general, and he's going on and on about a cabal of witches who are destroying men's lives and seeking world domination. Yikes, like all of the problematic content you could ever expect to have in one of those videos, they threw it in. Oh my god. And creepy coroner, of course, is real into this, and he keeps just getting creepier and creepier because you know what he has in his fridge? A jar with Deidre's heart in it. Like, ew. Like, tell me he doesn't eat people. Like, you can't tell me that, because this guy totally eats people. But enough with serial killer in training, okay? Let's go back to Rowan. Let's go see what's happening with her after she has escaped the Mayfair house. Now, it kind of starts ambiguously because Rowan and Cyprian, I guess they had to have met back up after Rowan escaped because they're back at Cyprian's apartment and she's sleeping in bed with him. Great. And I'm back to that whole thing in the show where like they don't establish time very well, because obviously I don't think this is like the next day after she escaped the house. There had to have been like some type of trauma conversation. Like, how did they meet back up? We weren't shown any of this, so it makes me like have to wonder, like, when is this taking place? There's no sense of time here, and I don't know if that's on purpose or not. Either way, it's stupid. Like, tell me when things are. Like, I don't understand your timeline. But I'm just gonna say whatever. It's like a month later. We'll just say that for heaven's sakes. I'm just making it up at this point. So Rowan's asleep in bed. She gets like a breeze and it wakes her up. And you know, it's like full on Lasher just creeping on her, watching her sleep. And Rowan's like, okay, Edward Cullen, you need to leave me alone. This is not okay. And since she's not getting back to sleep anyway, she's like, all right, I'm gonna go eat a midnight snack. And Lasher, of course, doesn't leave her alone. He's right back there. And he's being very, not like sexually seductive, I would say, but more so like magically seductive. He's kind of like luring her to the dark side. Because if she gives into her witchy side, her powers, her Mayfair witch self, she's also kind of giving in to him. It's all kind of pushing her toward this. And he tells her, hey, why don't you touch that candle, see what happens? And she does, and like she can just grab the fire in the palm of her hand. It doesn't burn her. So like this is very like, that's super cool. But Cyprian wakes up and he's like, what's going on in here, Rowan? And she's like, nothing. And Cyprian's like, is Lasher here? And Rowan's like, no, just lying. Which is actually kind of book accurate, because in the book Rowan does continue having like contact and talking to Lasher for an extended period of time, and does it behind Michael's back. Cyprian's a stand-in for Michael in this, and Michael's her husband, and she just doesn't tell him about it. However, in the book, she's also doing a lot of like consensual non-consent stuff with Lasher. And so thank goodness they're not going there in this. But Cyprian's not like fooled by her saying, Lasher's not here. He knows that he's here. Like, he figures this out pretty quickly. And he's just like, you know what? It's the pendant. That's how Lasher got through my wards, because like he's warded his shit out of here. If you have the pendant on, obviously it's giving him like a conduit to you. Take it off. So she's like, okay, she takes off the pendant. As soon as she does, Lasher disappears. Seems to be a good theory. She gives it to Cyprian. However, she goes on a full like Gollum level freak out about Cyprian taking away the precious from her. You know, no one can have the precious. But she comes to her senses, and it's the full on like Saved by the Bell, I'm so excited, I'm so scared kind of feel to the scene where she's just like, I'm losing my mind. And you know, Cyprian, he just kind of like comforts her. He's like, it's okay, I'm not mad at you. I get it. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna make this conscious decision to give this to you and not have a Gollum like freak out about it. So Cyprian's like, okay, I'm gonna leave right now with it so this doesn't happen again. So he takes it, he's gonna go back to the Talamasca, figure out some shit about the pendant. So the next morning, Tessa comes over to the apartment to see Rowan. And she wants to speak to her about all the stuff she's seeing online. She's like, Rowan, look at this picture. That's your mother's heart in a jar. And Tessa's like telling her, like, there's a whole like groups online talking about burning witches. Like, creepy coroner guy has been DMing her a lot. Like, ew. Ew, she's a teenager. Oh my gosh, To Catch a Predator called It Wants Its Creep Back. It's just so gross to me. Like my skin crawls. But Tessa's still trying to get Rowan to understand the seriousness of this issue that the online incel groups are organizing. This is the real horror story here. The incels are organized. We gotta be proactive before they show up at our door with pitchforks and torches, you know? But Rowan just doesn't want to take it seriously. Mind you, she hasn't been in this magical world that long. She's like, whatever, let them be incels online, go live your life. However, Tessa doesn't agree with this. She's the little activist. She's perhaps a bit self-righteous at this point, but she's just like, you know what, Rowan? If you don't want the power, maybe you should just not have it then. Maybe you should just give it to someone who wants it. But Rowan's like, that is impossible. I'm the designee. I have to deal with this. And Tessa's like, who told you that? Like, did Lasher tell you this? Why do you believe Lasher? Like, she's like, Rowan, I'm 16 and I figured this out. But this kind of sets in motion the whole rest of the episode because it's really about Rowan trying to separate herself from this whole other half of her personality. So Rowan starts thinking about this and she's like, maybe Tessa's right. This is a good idea. I'm gonna go visit Cortland and see what can happen here. So she goes to Cortland, right? And she's like, Cortland, I need to get rid of Lasher's stat. Like, what can I do to get out of the inheritance? And Cortland's like, no, don't worry about it. You just got to get used to Lasher. Give him another chance. He probably just spoke to you, with what happened with Carlotta. Because apparently everyone in the family knows that Rowan killed Carlotta somehow. So Cortland tells her, it can't be done. You can't get rid of Lasher. You're the inheritor. Tough luck. But Rowan notices that Cortland's hand is shaking a bit, and so she uses her powers real quick. And she sees that he has ALS. And she goes into doctor mode, telling him how she can help with his doctors and like new treatments and stuff. And ultimately her like offering to help him with a disease that he doesn't want the family to know about ultimately kind of sways Cortland into wanting to try to help Rowan. And he tells her that way back in the day, the family did a transference one time between Catherine and Julian. And Julian is Cortland's father. Maybe I can call Dolly Jean. She's the one who probably knows about it, and we'll see what can happen. So he's giving her like hope. In exchange for Cortland getting this information for her and hopefully helping her, he wants Rowan to go do a walkthrough of the MAYFAIR wing of the hospital. You know, do a favor for me, I'll do a favor for you type of thing. So I'm just gonna give a book note on this because that never happened in the book. No one transferred powers. There's no way to transfer them out. It's just Catherine and Julian were brother and sister. Catherine was always the designee. She was always the inheritor of Lasher. And her brother Julian was also a really powerful witch in his own right. And so Lasher just hung out with him a whole lot. And they actually resemble each other quite a bit. I think like Lasher tried to, base his appearance and like a lot of his personality off Julian, but they actually had a really fraught relationship with each other. And in the end of things, he never really was the inheritor because if Catherine called Lasher, her call takes precedence over anything Julian wants. Anyways, back to this continuity. Cortland, he calls up Dolly Jean. She comes over to the house because she kind of knows how to do the transference. She gives him Julian's old journal, which I was kind of excited to see because in the book, all of his journals got burned and like, oh my gosh, there's one of them. It's real. So it happened to have the transference ritual in it. And she tells him it's super risky and it may not even change much of anything when it comes to Lasher. But Cortland is a bit self-serving in his own right. He's not really doing this to help Rowan so much as he would rather have a designee who's really pro-Mayfair and would do more to protect the family's interests. So he's like, hey, it's worth a shot. If we can get a different Mayfair in line to be the inheritor, it'd probably be better for me. Meanwhile, Rowan goes to the hospital. She's with Jojo, that's Cortland's daughter, and she's showing Rowan around the hospital. She's like, hey, you know, we could sure use a new head of neurosurgery out here. Like, you know, maybe, like, you could stay. Like, kind of come maybe with the family. And they're walking along the hall and they turn the corner and guess who's there? Lasher. Lasher is there, still kind of stalking Rowan. And here's the thing. Rowan is not wearing the pendant. The pendant's back at the Talamasca, okay? Lasher is not necessarily bound to this pendant, okay? These are a lot of clues leading up to things because I have predictions coming. But besides my predictions, Jojo has some witchy powers and hers are premonitions of the future. And she has a full, like, That's So Raven moment where she, like, has a premonition and she's like, oh, we need to go to the Mayfair house because I need to, like, introduce you to someone right now. So they go to the house, right? Dolly Jean rolls up. They go in the house. Dolly Jean starts telling Rowan about what's involved in the ritual, and there's the risks involved. Like, if she does this, she might lose her witch abilities to, like, you know, diagnose. And there's risks. You could lose things. And Rowan's like, no, I'm, like, still a fucking doctor. My medical degree isn't gonna disappear. So, like, no, I want to do this. Also, clue number 2 right here. Dolly Jean confirms what I have been saying this whole season, that the connection to Lasher is in Rowan's blood. It's not in the necklace. The necklace is a conduit and a symbol, but it's in her blood. So Rowan still wants to continue on with the ritual. So Rowan, Dolly Jean, they go off into Julian's old workshop of the Mayfair house, and they're looking for supplies for the ritual. And Dolly Jean mentions that Julian used to be really into necromancy. And I'm going to give you a book note here, because no, Julian wasn't into necromancy. His mother, Marguerite, was. You know, she was the lady with the heads in jars and, like, really into necrophilia, like Marguerite. Rowan actually finds one of the heads in a jar, and I was like, oh, God. That was a very vivid scene from the book, so I'm like, they did the head in jar thing. But they find what they're looking for. It's this little coffin, and Rowan pulls it out, and it's a doll made out of all of, like, this human bones and hair of all of the previous Mayfair designees. And in the book, there was a doll for each one, so there would have been a whole box full of dolls, but this is much more efficient because it's just one doll for all of them. So she picks it out, and Dolly Jean, she gives Rowan a piece of Deirdre's hair to add because she was the last designee. So she has to, like, braid it into the hair of the doll. Rowan's having, like, reservations about this, but Dolly Jean's like, girl, you gotta witch up because, like, shit's gonna get even crazier tonight when we do the ritual. Like, if you can't do this, we should just give up now. So, like all the rest of the episodes, this cuts back and forth a lot between storylines, so I'm gonna try my best to keep it all together here, but, like, just be aware. It's gonna cut back and forth a lot. So we're gonna cut over to Creepy Coroner again. Oh no. He goes to the incel rally, right? And it's that leader again, Arlo White. He's like literally like, it's a tailgate. He's literally standing in the back of a truck and he's just like, witches are evil. We need to burn them. However, they show a very conspicuous shot of Samir at the rally, who is Cyprian's friend from the Talamasca. I am assuming he is there to gather information because, like, why would they very conspicuously show Samir and not make a big deal out of it? So I'm assuming they're undercover. I hope at least. I could not handle it if he was like pro-witch hunter. So Arlo finishes his speech, right? And Creepy Coroner, he works up all of his nerve and he goes up to his man crush and he gives him a little gift. He brought Deirdre's heart in like a cooler and he gives it to Arlo and everybody cheers, you know, here's a heart in a jar. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Like, oh my word. But enough with that. Let's cut back to the Talamasca. So Cyprian, he's back there. He's with the witch healer woman from the previous episode. And I went and checked to see if I knew if her character name was anywhere, and it's not. She's just listed as healer on IMDb. This woman doesn't have a name apparently, but he's back with her. And he's going to use his powers to see the history of this pendant and see what the connection is to the MAYFAIR family. And the healer woman is there just to watch over Cyprian because this is a magical object. He doesn't really know what will happen when he touches it and uses his abilities on it. He touches it, he gets transported back in time, back to Suzanne. And we get dropped into the point where, she's been accused of witchcraft and the whole town is turning against her. And so Witch Hunter's like, no, don't worry about it. We're gonna do the river test, everybody. If she drowns, she was a witch. And if she doesn't, then she is innocent. Don't worry about it. We'll just dunk her in the river for a long time and see if she drowns. But we get our first glimpse of the pendant in the past. And it's around the neck of fancy wig witch hunter guy. And he literally uses it to imprison Suzanne in a cage. And in the book, Suzanne had never seen or had the pendant at all. It doesn't even come into the family until about 10 years later or so, when her daughter Deborah bought it in Amsterdam just as a pretty necklace. And at that point she had already inherited Lasher. She just bought a necklace. It's just kind of an heirloom, but it's not really related to Lasher being related to her. She just bought it in Amsterdam. But back to the story at hand here. It's nighttime. They're about ready to go take Suzanne down to the river to, torture her. And her sister's there and she's fighting through the crowd. It's very Hunger Games. We're Primrose Everdeen, and she's running up to her and she's like, use the wicked words, use them, it's the only way to save you. And then aggro dad shows up and grabs her sister and drags her away with the creepiest smile. Ew, what is this show becoming? This is To Catch a Predator all the time. I'm so grossed out. But Suzanne is gonna die. She's has to fight for herself here. So she starts using the wicked words, which is the spell that calls Lasher. And things start getting real witchy here. Her voice doubles and storm gusts of wind start descending on the village. So Lasher's about to fuck up some peasants, yo. And I'll put a book note here. This doesn't happen with Suzanne because Suzanne just literally got burned at the stake in front of her daughter Deborah. And Deborah was rescued by the Talamasca. And about 30 years after Suzanne's death, when Deborah herself is accused of witchcraft, she calls down Lasher and he fucks up some peasants. It happens a little later in the book with Deborah, not Suzanne. But either way, peasants about to get fucked up and I'm here for it. We're gonna put a pin in that for now. We're gonna go back to Rowan because the ritual is beginning. And there's 15 MAYFAIR women, including Rowan. They're in a circle. They start reciting the names of all of the previous designees. And they pass around the bone doll. And Dolly Jean starts the spell beseeching Lasher to attach himself to a new witch. And Rowan is using the same words that Suzanne does to call down Lasher. And it starts getting real witchy again with this spell. Rowan's eyes turn solid white and stuff, kind of like how we saw Deirdre a few episodes ago. And they're successful, they call Lasher. And he and Rowan are kind of outside of time in this moment. And he asks her, really? You did all of this just to get rid of me? Is this what you really want? And Rowan stands up for herself and she's like, I can be my whole self without you. I don't need you. So Lasher, he ultimately lets her go. But I never believe a word Lasher says. So I'm okay, he's letting her go for now. But anyway, they snap back into time and Rowan starts barfing up the MAYFAIR pendant and just barfs it up. Dolly Jean starts taking it around the circle to seeing if whichever new witch is going to resonate with. And of course, it resonates with Tessa. And she accepts the inheritance. This is what she wanted. And this is big clue number 3 right here. That Lasher let Rowan go only to pick a teenager that Rowan feels responsible for and wants to protect. So it's going to force Rowan to stay in the picture to try to protect her. Obviously, there's a lot of clues going on here. So I'm oh, it's so nefarious. So the ritual is done and Rowan checks. She still has her witch gift. That's clue number 4, everybody. Nothing got taken away from Rowan. I don't know if this transference worked, essentially. But enough with that. We're going to go back to that pin here. We're back in Suzanne's memories, right? Lasher, he shows up after her call, the gusts of wind and stuff, and he's like full avenging devil, and he materializes out of flames, and he can see Cyprian in the memory, which is wild, and so he like telepathically knocks him out. And I'm kind of assuming this moment where he could see Cyprian in the memory and knock him out might have been the moment where Rowan is barfing up the MAYFAIR necklace. What's connecting this moment? Rowan's barf. But Lasher, he comes to Suzanne, and the witch hunter starts getting real antsy because I don't think he can see Lasher, but he knows shit's going down. So he's gonna go stab Suzanne, but Lasher just telepathically chokes him to death with his own pretty necklace. Oh wow. It just clotheslines him. So he dies. And then the necklace, he gives it to Suzanne. It appears around her neck. And he's like, come, beloved. And it's very, seductive in this moment. So she takes the key and she unlocks the cage to go with him. And this is the moment where you get why Lasher is seductive to the family. You see him through Suzanne's eyes. Avenging devil comes to rescue you and calls you beloved. There are so many fantasy romances with that exact same plot. So yeah, I get it. I get Lasher in Suzanne's perspective. In the modern day, it's a bit different. But anyway, they're having a lovely first date because, they just watching the town burn down together. And he tells her that she's his witch and she will have all she desires. And in return, the only thing she has to do is fulfill an ancient prophecy. And we know what this is if we've read the books. Basically, Lasher's been manipulating this family for all of these decades and years and centuries in order to selectively breed them to create a witch who is powerful enough to give Lasher his own human body. So yeah, she's fulfilling this prophecy through her bloodline. However, back in the present here, remember Rowan barfed up the key. What does that mean for Cyprian? Cyprian was holding the key. Now the key is gone. It's been pulled out of his hands while he was in this trance. And since it was a magical item, they didn't really know how his powers are going to react. And apparently he's still stuck in the trance. He's trapped now in this memory cycle. This is going to be an obvious prediction, but tell me they're not going to do this. Next episode, Cyprian's going to have to go through all of the MAYFAIR witches to the present. So he's going to have to go through the whole memory cycle to be released from the trance he's in. You've started it, you've got to complete it. So we're going to get all of the rest of the MAYFAIRs next episode. I bet you. But speaking of the next episode, we get a big setup for it here because Tessa, she has the pendant. She's now the designee. She feels yeah, I have it now. I have the power. I'm going to take the fight to the witch hunters, thinking she's going to have Lasher at her back for protection. So she starts texting Creepy Coroner back. She's like, ooh, I want to see this heart. Why don't we meet up? Red flag number 1. Creepy Coroner wants to meet her in the middle of the woods. Have you never seen a horror movie? You never go alone to the middle of the woods. Oh no. Tessa's witchy power is the ability to glamour people. So she starts kind of glamoring Creepy Coroner. It's you want to give me the heart, right? I know you're really not a bad guy. You're a nice guy and you want to give me the heart. And she gets snapped out of her glamour because wouldn't you know, all the rest of the witch hunters show up to capture Tessa. And Tessa's all right, this is my big battle. She starts calling out to Lasher, but guess what? Lasher doesn't show up. Tessa's now captured by the witch hunters. Credits. What? That's one of those big cuts to credits that I kind of really like because it hooks you. It makes you want to come back next week because some crazy shit just went down. So yeah, Tessa's been captured by the witch hunters. Lasher didn't show up. Obviously, I feel like they have been setting this up this whole episode. It's going to be quite obvious at this point. My prediction here, the transference doesn't work. It never worked in the first place. Lasher, he's attached to the bloodline. He can't just go to a new person. It's this particular bloodline. Rowan's the only one who has it right now. He's still attached to Rowan. He's just gonna force her hand. He's gonna sit back and relax while Tessa's, kidnapped and tortured, I guess. I don't know what's gonna happen to Tessa, but nothing good. It's just basically forcing Rowan's hand here. It's hey, if you want to rescue Tessa, come hang out with me. We gotta be attached to each other. One of those things. So obviously I feel I don't know. I'd be really surprised if they don't go that direction because I feel they did so much to set it up. But that being said, I thought actually a lot happened in this episode to drive the plot forward. It was fun. It was witchy. Like, they got some good horror elements going, and like I thought it was really good because finally we're getting plot. We're not just getting like moody vibes for a whole episode. And we'll see what happens next week with episode 6, because like I kind of think I've nailed it where it's gonna go. We'll see if I'm right. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below, where do you think it's going? I gave a lot of predictions. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. Goodbye!